Hello, I'm Bret Moss, and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Michael Brown. Michael Brown is an author and a public speaker. He also has experience as a journalist, columnist, and magazine editor. He was born in South Africa, and he currently lives there. In 1987, he developed an acutely painful neurological condition known as Horton's syndrome. After years of conventional and alternative therapies, Michael embarked on a personal quest to heal his condition using his own experience as a barometer and guide. His healing discoveries and his spiritual awakening led him to write the book, The Presence Process, a healing journey into present moment awareness. Michael Brown, welcome to The Defining Moment. It's really a pleasure for me to welcome you here to our show today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming. Our topic today is spiritual awakening. And I'd like to begin by inviting you to share with our viewers a defining moment from your own life which led to your own spiritual awakening.
Well, the defining moment I want to share is related to an experience I had aside from the acute pain that I went through. The first time I ever had an attack of Horton's syndrome was in itself a defining moment and punctuated the beginning of a spiritual awakening. But the experience I'll share with you is related to the first time that I took a medicinal substance, a plant medicine. It's called peyote, which is sacred to the Native Americans and is used as a holy sacrament in the Native American church. I was prepared a tea of peyote and instructed to go down to a river called the Gila River, which happened to be Gila, but it was called the Gila River, and to sit there and drink this awful tasting substance and then lie down for half an hour and do my best not to throw up, and then to enter the experience. And the experience that I had on that day was to enter what I now call present moment awareness for the first time fully in my life experience. A moment in which I was absolutely physically in this body, physically present, where I had mental clarity, a sense of complete emotional balance, as well as what we might think of as termed as spiritual connection, although I prefer the word vibrational than spiritual, because I don't really know what spiritual means, but I know I can get a sense of vibrational. So in that moment, I realized that being in that moment, what I call the present moment, I'm all here, that there was no pain and discomfort, there was no distraction, there was no confusion, there was no trauma, there was no feeling of separation between myself and everything else. And I realized that the cause of the pain that I was going through was the fact that I wasn't here in that moment. I saw that what my body was doing by creating such a symptom is also an interesting word, symptom means some time, piece of unintegrated time. What my body was doing through this symptomatic condition was attempting to draw me out of the mental place that I was in, the state of distraction, mental confusion, back into this body, back into this moment. That's what it was doing. That was the purpose it was serving. And so in that moment, two things happened. I realized that the greatest accomplishment that I could set upon was to find out, why I wasn't showing up in my life. What was the reason why I didn't live in this moment? And then, of course, how to approach the moment in a greater and greater way and to start entering. At that time, it was a destination, because the experience of present moment awareness was so profound, you want to get back into that. But now, for me, it's a journey. It has become a journey. So that was a defining moment in setting a course, almost asking the question, which becomes the quest. And has led to the writing of the book, the development of the procedure, and to you and I sitting here in this moment.
Great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and thank you so much for being here to tell us more about your journey.
You're welcome.
Many people make valiant efforts every day through various kinds of activities to become spiritual.
Right.
As a means of overcoming their inner emotional discomforts.
Yes.
Why are so many people frustrated by these efforts and unable to find the freedom and the peace that they're seeking?
Because because we're missing out a step, a very important step. So this is an understanding. To understand the best way to answer this question is to tell you about the pathway of awareness.
Okay, please go right ahead.
So the pathway of awareness is a way that our awareness moves as it enters this world. And this pathway of awareness is most easily seen in watching a child enter the world. When the child enters the world, it's an emotional being. That's all it's able to do, is to emote. Then it starts to be able to use its emotions to communicate, and it starts entering a mental body awareness.
Okay.
And then it only becomes physically aware enough to pick up a cup. A child doesn't enter the world and pick up something or run around the room, nor does a child enter the world and go, what an experience that was in the womb. Okay, it doesn't start speaking straight away. So there is a pathway that our awareness moves through the world, from emotional to mental to physical.
Okay.
Now this pathway of awareness is even more clearly evident in what I call the 7-year cycle. What I saw is the 7-year cycle. The first 7 years of our experience is we're children and we're emotionally spontaneous beings. Then at around 7 years old, we get sent to an educational facility of some sort, and our mental capacities are then become a point of focus. Around about the age of 14, we actually go through a physical transformation called puberty,
Yes.
and then we start to become more physically aware of others, our relationships with others, and what part we're going to play in this world. We become very physically aware of this world.
Yes.
So that again, we see the pathway going from the emotional, childhood, to the mental, the teenage. That's why they say teenagers think they know everything, because they're in that mental place. And then into the physical. And
From 14 onwards.
14 onwards, to really become a physical participant of this experience. Now, when we are wanting to know ourselves, or we're wanting to know what God is, or we're wanting to show up in this moment, or any of these ways we describe this calling to authenticity or awakening, spiritual awakening, we always automatically reverse that pathway of awareness, even though we're not aware of it. So for example, if I'm going to learn how to meditate,
Yes.
okay, the first step in meditation is to physically be able to be still. In a posture, adopt this physical posture and sit still, physical. Then I will be given some sort of mantra, something to say, something to repeat, to get my mental focus. Okay, and then I will have some experience of love and devotion, or something that will come as a result of the practice. So again, we're going from physical to mental to emotional, which is exactly reversing the pathway of awareness, because we want a vibrational experience, which is the experience after the emotional, or before we enter the world. When we enter the world, we enter in the emotional place as a child. Before that, in the womb, we're in a vibrational state, or what we can call a spiritual state. In the womb, we can't do anything, we can only be,
Yes.
which is a characteristic of the vibrational state. So what happens when I now am in such discomfort, or there's something in my life driving me to want to know myself, or to know God, or whatever it is that's driving me towards
Or
that.
simply to escape from that suffering.
Exactly, is that I try and go directly into the vibrational experience. So I will try and go and meditate and try and go into the spiritual immediately. So there are certain steps we have to take in order to have that vibrational or spiritual experience. And one of those steps is to awaken the emotional body. So just because I physically understand the need for doing meditation, and I mentally comprehend what meditation is about and that it's supposed to link me up with God or have a spiritual experience, doesn't mean I can just get there because I have this understanding. I then have to awaken my emotional body, because my emotional body is the means by which I can perceive the spiritual. The spiritual is the vibrational realm, and a vibrational is initially initially experienced through felt perception. I feel a vibration. If I don't develop my emotional body, if I ignore my fear, anger, and grief, and I try and go around it or over it, or go and seek a path that will deliver me and save me one day from all of this, I'm not going through my emotional body. I'm trying to go around it or over it. And the nature of our journey is this. We all have the exact amount of fear, anger, and grief within our own emotional body, that when we allow ourselves to feel, enables us to develop an emotional body vocabulary, a vocabulary of feeling. And it's that vocabulary that we then use to perceive the vibrational. If I don't develop that vocabulary, I can meditate forever and have no authentic experience. I have to imagine it or pretend it's happening.
So let me see if I'm following you. So the vocabulary is developed by getting in touch with your emotions through three things that you identify.
Yes.
Anger, grief,
and fear.
Fear
is basically about our physicality. It's about my mortality, my physical. Anger is always a mental. Revenge is a plot, right? So anger is very much destroys the mental body state or fractures it, and grief is directly related to the emotional body.
Okay.
Right. And even in certain scriptures, it says, it's written that through suffering, we know God, But it doesn't mean I have to go and add suffering to my experience to know God. I don't have to go and lie on a bed of nails so I can know God. I just have to deal with my suffering that I already have, because my suffering is a rite of passage to developing the awareness, the felt perception that I can feel the communication from God. And that's another way of me understanding, for example, someone like Jesus said, blessed are those who mourn. Not just arbitrary mourning, but actually if I go into my grief,
yes,
my grief will develop my emotional body capacity, my ability to have felt perception, my ability to have emotional body awareness, my ability to be in the heart and function from the heart. And it's my heart, not my mind, not necessarily, mind is the wrong word, not my mental body that interacts with God. It's my feelings. If love is a feeling, peace is a feeling, and even my first encounter with what God is for me in my journey will first come as a feeling, not as a mental concept or even a physical circumstance, but as a feeling.
So in a sense, the suffering that you're talking about is also this disconnection that we have from God and the kind of alienation we feel when we're not connected well with our fellow man.
Well, the suffering we feel comes from imprinting that happens to us in the first 7 years. That first 7 year cycle that I spoke about in the 7 year cycles, the first 7 years of our life as childhood, we go through experience that imprint our emotional body with the way energy runs. So, for example, whatever I experience during my childhood becomes what my definition of love is. I ask for love and I have an experience. I will then go and replicate that experience in my life as a means to look for love. A very simple example of that is if I am physically, mentally, or emotionally abused as a child. And a child, what is a child? It's radiating, it's open to love. We're seeking to have an experience of love. If I get physically, mentally, or emotionally abused as a child, I may enter a loving relationship as an adult with wine and roses. Okay, romance, ideas, an adult's concept about what love is. But at some point, that relationship will become a mentally, physically, or emotionally abusive relationship, because unless that experience comes up, my definition of love is not fulfilled. So my suffering is really caused by me manifesting a life according to the imprinting that happened to me in my emotional body as a child.
Now, is that necessarily negative in nature for all people? Was there always a negative experience of suffering as a child?
My feeling about this, or my insight about this, was there was a time when we were more in touch with what I would call our indigenous selves, or we were more community orientated, etc., etc. And we actually had rites of passage that delivered us from one point of experience to another.
In other words, we transformed from being a child who's free to express their emotions
to being
a young adult who has to behave a particular way.
But we went through that transformation consciously, and we were ushered through that by our
social conditioning.
But no, we were ushered through that by our community. Now we do those rites of passage unconsciously. For example, a rite of passage that would happen to a 14-year-old in an indigenous environment would, because they were going now from a mental state to a more physical experience, one of the rites of passage would have been marking the body and piercing the body to mark a greater awareness of the body. We still do that today. We don't know why we do it, and when a rite of passage is done unconsciously, it becomes destructive, not creative and constructive. Another rite of passage is when we were about 21 or so and now going to enter full adulthood, we would be taken away from the community and taken off onto some vision quest or given some experience so that we could alter our consciousness. We would be fed something by the medicine person of that community that would alter our consciousness, or we'd go through a physical procedure that would cause an altering of consciousness so we could see our connection with the universe. Today, we buy a keg and we go and have our 21st birthday party. Right. We're attempting to do the same thing, except we're doing it unconsciously. So the rite of passage is still there, it's just done unconsciously. When we go through these passages of life unconsciously, they create unconscious behavior, and unconscious behavior always causes suffering. But on a more primal level, this is a conditional universe. This is a limited conditional universe, and we're unconditional beings. And to come in as an unconditional being into a conditional experience is going to be traumatic. It is going to be traumatic. But that trauma is the same trauma a bodybuilder goes through if they want to build up the muscles. So a bodybuilder, if they want to build up muscles, you can't sit on the couch and watch TV with your buddies and want to be a bodybuilder. You have to go to the gym and work these muscles and actually break them down and cause pain to them and let them recallus and break them down if you want to build the physical vehicle as a stronger vehicle. The emotional vehicle is key to having a conscious experiential encounter with God. Without the emotional body, awareness being strong, we can't have that. The trauma we see ourselves going through and during childhood that imprints us, when we're going through it and looking at it from a time-based paradigm, it looks like something going wrong. But the more we enter present moment awareness, the more we enter this moment and be able to see our lives from how perfect this moment is and how everything brought us to this, we realize that that trauma is the same as building the muscles. When I work through the trauma, when I actually embrace my suffering and I feel the amount of grief and the amount of anger and the amount of fear in my emotional body, the gifts of awareness and perceptive ability I receive from that show me that it's deliberate. And deliberate has the word liberate in it. So from my own experience, I can see that the so-called traumas I went through in the first 7 years of my life that imprinted my emotional body were deliberate. They brought me to this moment. And by overcoming them or moving through them, integrating them.
Now, they were deliberate on your part or deliberate on the part of the community that led you through them?
Not or, and.
Of both.
Yes, and.
Okay.
So the whole thing about it is getting into an and place. Yes, my parents were imprinting that on me by their behavior, and I was coming into this life to receive that and setting myself up for it, and. This is a multidimensional experience. It's an and way. There's a saying that we don't have our own, the scientists will tell us that our DNA is not fully functional. There's a whole lot of junk DNA that's not working, and we only have a certain amount of DNA that's working. And I like the word DNA, and I think if we want to fully activate all our DNA and reach our potential, we have to realize that the word DNA spelled backwards is and.
Okay,
in other words, I am a disciple, and I'm a lover, and I'm a teacher, and I'm a human, and, rather this or that, which creates the separation consciousness and causes me to leave the moment, running away from whatever's going on.
So this is part of the spiritual awakening, is the ability to be in the present moment and have that kind of and consciousness where you're open to everything.
Yes, that was one of the realizations in that defining moment of how much I was intimately part of everything that was happening around me in that moment, and that my perception that I was separate from it in any way happened because I wasn't in the moment to see and feel the connection. You see, the connection to be experienced, that is in the and place, is in the causal place of our experience, which is the emotional body, is the causal place. It's the first place in the pathway of awareness. Then the mental is a radiance of that energy in motion, emotion, and then the physical circumstances are. So you and I can be physically connected, right? I can reach over and touch you, okay?
Yeah.
And we're physically connected.
Yes.
Or separate, right?
Yes.
Mentally, you and I can be connected. We can agree.
Yes.
Or disagree. Now we're disconnected mentally. But emotionally, as far as energy in motion, the energy that runs through you and the energy that runs from me is inseparable, whether I'm here, whether I'm in South Africa. So only when I allow my awareness to be anchored in an emotional place and an energy in motion place, do I become aware that I'm energetically connected with everything in my world. If my awareness is anchored in a mental place, I can't experience that. You can only be an atheist if you're in the mental body. If you enter the emotional body, you can't say, there's no intelligence in this universe, because you can see how everything is connected.
Yes.
So that's the whole thing about the pathway of awareness, is that realizing that when the importance of the heart is when I anchor myself in the heart, in the emotional body, that's when I enter felt perception. I can feel the consequences of my presence in this world, and I tread accordingly. So if I am going to hurt someone or manipulate someone, I feel the consequences of those thoughts, words, and deeds before I even put them into play.
And this is where conscience comes into play.
And the saying, where there is love, there is no law.
Mm.
When I'm functioning from felt perception, no one has to tell me how to behave. My own heart gives me an instant feedback of my intentions. But if I'm in a mental place, I can justify any behavior.
Yes.
I can justify manipulating someone to get a certain profit out of them because I can't feel the consequences.
Which is pretty much a good characterization of the world we live in. Is it's very much driven by information and thinking.
Yes, we are majority of us are anchored either in the physical, so we are very physically transfixed by the physical world. Mm-hmm. We believe that the world of form is the causal point and we identify completely with it. If we gain a little bit more awareness, in other words, we're moving backwards along that pathway of awareness, we may interact with the world more mentally and be philosophical. Mm-hmm. And be able to discuss and have understandings about things. And then a greater awareness is when we move into the emotional body and start to perceive the world from that point. The closer we get to the emotional body, the more aware we become, and the more we become aware of our connection. The condition that we have been in for a long time on this planet is that we have been, first of all, we were in physical body awareness only for thousands of years. That's the phase, you know.
Right.
And then, yeah, absolutely. And then and that was for a long period, okay. And then we entered the mental body because as a species, we are going backwards along the pathway of awareness because we are evolving. So then we went into the mental machine, okay. Tools, technology. For the last 100 years, complete.
Right.
Okay, mental. No feeling about it. It's just I can justify it by mentally, And now what's happened is we're moving into the emotional. So that is the experience humanity is being invited into now, because the invitation is going to come at some point for us to enter the vibrational. In other words, to be in this world, but not of it. And that, in order to accomplish that, we need a powerful physical vehicle to hold a consciousness which is actually unlimited in a mortal limited vehicle. We need a powerful mental body as a tool of navigation, not thinking and analysis. There's nothing to think about when you're in the present moment. And a powerful emotional body, because the emotional body is energy in motion. It's the fuel source of our experience. So that's why they say if you pray and there's no feeling, forget it. There's no prayer. It's the fuel source. It's what moves things. So, and all of that is coming so that we can have a vibrational experience while we're here. But we need to have the vehicle in place, the navigation system in place, the fuel system in place, so that this consciousness can be in this limited world, but also have an unlimited awareness. Imagine a world of that, because the unlimited awareness is what we call no order of difficulty, or miracle consciousness, where there's no order of difficulty. If I go to a doctor and I have a cold, or if I have cancer, he will treat me differently.
Yes.
If I have because he functions from no order of difficulty. But the vibrational or the spiritual created this cup, created our bodies, created all this technology, created everything. What is there in order of difficulty for that which can create everything? That's where we want to be connected, in that place, being here but connected in that place. What are the consequences of a being that truly functions from no order of difficulty? And I feel that that is what evolution is moving us to that level of experience.
So you're talking about simplicity.
Well, I'm talking about being able to move mountains. But when we get to the place of being able to move mountains, knowing that the mountains are in the right place. So it's a paradoxical place, because you gain all this connection with the source of everything, but it's also the erosion of your will to allow things to be as they are.
Yes.
It's a simultaneous...
And that's also part of spiritual awakening.
It's part of what spiritual awakening is about.
That there's no destination to get to.
If what we call God is an infinite being, then surely the journey of God realization must be an infinite one. How can it not be? How can there be a destination point in that which is infinite? The mind, you see, the mental body cannot hold that. To actually get that, this is an infinite journey, I have to hold it here. I can't hold it in the mental as a concept.
And so with the heart and emotion being so important, then love is also got to be an important part of that in a person's relationship with God.
Absolutely. And my definition of love, because love can be expressed emotionally, it can be expressed mentally, it can be expressed physically. But where I interact with love is I look at the word and I see, if I look at that word love, I see the word evolve in that word. If I look at the word evolve, I see the word love staring at me very clearly. And what love means to me is I won't interfere, I won't go into fear about what's going on with you. Love means I will allow you to go through whatever experience you require in order for you to grow. That's how you know I love you. Not by anything I say or blah, 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 but if I allow you to have your own experience, I invite you to have your own experience. And I do not interfere, I do not go into fear about your experience because I know you're the causal point of it. That's when I'm entering a state of love. And that's what love, to me, that's what a loving God is. A loving God is saying, here, have your experience. I will give you guidance, but I'm always asking you to enter your own experience and grow from that experience, and I won't interfere. I'm not going to go into fear because I know that you're going to learn something from making the mistakes you're going to make, from all the journeys you have. You're going to learn something real out of your experience, and that's what, for me, what love is.
Michael, very profound what you're saying, and you won't believe it. We're already out of time for our first interview. I want to thank you so much for being our guest in the Defining Moment. It's been so insightful and really a learning experience for me to listen to you. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me here.
It's been a pleasure. You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating a Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching and have a great day.